There we go. So yeah. I'll just kind of start. um. All right. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the first devcast. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Goodgis.
How's it going?
Um. So how are you today? Let's
Hey,
start with that.
I'm doing great. It's been really hot here in Ohio,
Yeah.
which is rare. Normally it's cold and snowing quite a bit, but it's been brutal. It's like 85% humidity and like 90-degree weather here or close to that.
Bro.
So it's been a nice change of pace.
Yeah. It's all like
Uh,
global warming.
it feels like it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but yeah.
the weather here's been all over the place. It was sunny for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then the past like couple days, it's just been non-stop rain, like flooding everywhere.
Dang.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's pretty drastic. We got a little bit of
yeah,
rain today, but yeah, we need some more rain for sure.
yeah. Fair enough. So for anyone that doesn't really know who you are, although most of them are probably coming over from you, um, could you just give sort of a little introduction of who you are and what you do?
For sure. Yeah, so I go by Goodgis on the internet. My actual name's Mark, for those who are curious. And I'm a professional graphic designer who's kind of trying to become a game dev. And I run a small game studio called Fearth, there's about 8 of us, I think. And so really, on YouTube, I just make videos about games I'm working on, projects. I always have at least one screaming segment in my videos. And, I just try to encourage and inspire other people. I've made a lot of mistakes through game dev and just design in the past. So I figure it's a great way to teach is through my own mistakes. And yeah, I really didn't think it would blow up to be what it is. And it's very exciting, and I get to meet new people every day, and it's
Yeah,
pretty cool. But that's game dev videos basically, and
yeah.
other things, software videos.
So I mean, being did you say it was a professional graph
Graphic
uh,
designer, yeah.
graphic designer? S- That's quite. I mean, that's quite a bit of a leap to game dev. So what kind of made you want to do games?
So, like going back to my childhood, I always wanted to make games. I actually had, before Fear Studios ever existed,
Mm.
when my brother and I were really young, he came up with his own little studio, and we made card games. So it was just like a rip off of Pokemon, which I'm sure most kids have done
Yeah.
at some point in their life. So it started out as that, and then we got into doing HTML and like website coding,
Mm.
and it was more so just like tinkering around with things.
Yeah.
And so we made our own website, we made a forum, and then a bunch of our friends and I would just like post on this forum, and eventually we discovered Game Maker. I want to say I was like 9 years old, maybe 10, when we found Game Maker. And I believe it was like Game Maker 7, or I think it was either 6 or 7. And we've always been kind of do it ourselves kind of people. Like if we see something like, oh, how can we make that? So
Yeah.
we found this game engine. We're like, oh, this is sweet. We can make our own video games. And that's kind of what launched it. We just started, my brother and I, my friends, we just made games. We did it off and on, up until probably high school, I think. And then I started to realize, like, you know what, this is hard. Making games, it's, the landscape was very different than it is now with YouTube. And I was thinking about my career, and I always loved making logos. I always loved making like advertisements for things.
All right.
And so I figured, I'm like, I wonder if there's like, you can do this for a living. And funny enough, my cousin, who's a graphic designer, he basically told me like, hey, you should be a graphic designer. You make logos, you do illustrations, you work on print, anything in your house. Like, just look around. There's always a logo. There's a book. There's a product. There's something. Everything is designed by a designer. So he's like, it pays well. So I figured I would put my like game dev stuff on hold and then try to be a designer. And that's what I kind of did. I focused for like 6 years, got my degree in it, and that's what I do full time. And really, it's taught me so much about game dev in a weird kind of way, because you learn a lot about marketing and, advertising, marketing, how to brand your game, how to create a consistent brand, even basic things like thumbnails. I've kind of learned from that graphic design background. So, but yeah, it's weird. I majority of what I do for like graphic design work is I just create icons, like little icons for things. And that's literally that's what I do, and I love doing it. It's super relaxing. And
I mean, it sounds it.
yeah, it's like it's basically commercial art. So yeah, it's weird though, because normally artists are terrible programmers. It's like the stereotype, or vice versa. They always say programmer art, like you're a good programmer but you're a terrible artist. And I think one of the most like deadly combinations, in a good way, is being good at programming and art. Like, if you got that, you're set.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my goal. Like, I've gotten, I don't want to say I've mastered design. I've gotten to a good place in design, and now my goal is to be at a good place with programming and pair the two together. And I don't know, see what happens. So
an amazing dev.
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, for sure. But
so what's it like, sort of having a full-time job, but also trying to balance that with game dev and YouTube and all that kind of stuff?
It's definitely a challenge. Putting in your 40 hours a week, and everything. Like, all my videos take about like 10-15 hours to edit. So if you're just, and that's not even including like collecting footage and recording audio and stuff like that. So it's quite a bit. That's where it's really helped me, having a studio where I have people that I work with they help manage our Discord. They help manage when we have game jams. They help manage the game jams. And even my brother Crepe, he actually has started to edit some of the videos for me, which has been incredible. And he does a fantastic job. So it's a lot to balance. But I think if you're still in college, or if you're, still living at home or something like that, I think you could focus a lot of energy just on YouTube or game dev and stuff like that, and really grow from it. If you're not, and you're trying to just like switch over full time right away, that's hard. So I think I'm very grateful for the situation of being able to work, especially be able to work from home right now, where I can work on stuff, and then I can, after work, I don't have a commute. I just start working on, game dev stuff and replying to comments, and but it's definitely a balance. I'm not going to say that I have perfected it by any means. I'm still learning. Some weeks are crazier than others, and I always joke that I wish there was two of me, two Goodgises, one to do the game dev side and one to do like the YouTube side. But I enjoy it though, so it really isn't work if you enjoy it. So and I enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah. What was the reason for kind of, because we talk about like you've got your editor and you've got your YouTube channel and stuff. What was sort of the push to go, I'm learning game dev, I've got the studio, I'm going to make YouTube videos now, like on top of all that? What kind of led you down the YouTube path as well?
I don't know, I guess I saw before I even got on YouTube and stuff, I had tried YouTube in the past. I had like a Let's Play channel back in the day, and I just had a couple dumb channels. I had a vlogging channel at one point.
Like every kid does.
Yeah, like and it's great. I highly recommend people do that, because it gets you better at editing, gets you better at like filming, and I think it's a great thing to do, but I never got more than 80 subscribers, I think.
Mm.
So when it came to game dev, I was working a lot on to the online like MMOs. I don't really like calling them that because they weren't that big. They're more like MMORPGs, which were Fantasy World and Whizbirds. And we were
Mm.
starting to grow a community of people where people are checking out and finding us. And I always thought like, man, the games that we're making are really cool. We're creating some really cool concepts. I just wish like people could see them. It's kind of like when you post something on the internet, it's like screaming in a sea of everyone around you screaming, and it's really hard for people to find you. So I started
Mm.
seeing game dev videos, and I think Vimlark might have been the first, or Pontypants or someone like that. I can't remember who it was. Um,
Mm.
and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like Vimlark was using construct or construct, however you want to pronounce it. Um, and I was using it a lot at the time, so I was like, "Oh, that's cool. This guy's making games." And then watched some other people like Reese, and I'm trying to think, Polymars, and so I just thought it was really cool, and it inspired me. I'm like, man, if these guys are doing this, and I was just surprised by like how well their channels blew up overnight, or at least it
Yeah.
seemed like that way to me. So I thought about like, well, you know what, maybe I should do it, but I really didn't want to because I had done YouTube in the past, didn't pan out, and I just don't want to. It's very hard to invest in a channel when it takes like there's slow growth. You need a lot of energy, and
Yeah.
at that time, I don't even know, it was 7 months ago. I just was already doing a lot of other things. I'm like, I don't know. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it. In the first video, if you go back to my very first video, I'm monotone. I sound grumpy, and it's because I am. I'm like, I actually did
Yeah.
not want to make the video. I'm like, I'm not gonna make the video. I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it. So, yeah, and when I published it, I had no idea, like no idea. Like the first video I put up, I was, I think I got like 30 subscribers, and that was just like mind-boggling. I'm like, what? People
Yeah.
actually subscribe to this? And so I just was like, I told myself when I used to do Let's Plays in the past, I actually had some momentum when I first started, but because
Mm.
my 14-year-old brain couldn't wrap it like its head around of like, hey, if you post consistently, you'll grow.
Yeah.
I couldn't wrap my head around it. So I got momentum and then I stopped, and then I could never pick it up again. So I told myself if I ever did YouTube again, I would just get momentum and just run with it. Like I wouldn't stop. And I think that's what's really helped the Goodgis channel. And I think also what's helped is like going to school, like taking editing classes and like design work. I think it's like a combination of things, but
Yeah.
but that's kind of what led to us creating the Goodgis channel. And in turn it's kind of crazy because it's made Fearth blow up, which I never thought it would work that way. I always thought it was like Fearth would make Goodgis grow. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like blown up more than I ever thought. And yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in I'm at kind of at the stage at the moment of I've done a few videos. A lot of them are quite monotone. I mean, my first video was like the mic quality was awful. I mean, the whole video was really cringy, and like I couldn't read a script, and it was awful. And like I got like I posted it everywhere, got like 30 subs, and I mean that was amazing to me because before
yeah,
that I was getting nothing. So like yeah, I kind of I get where you're coming from, and like I did sort of the same thing of I started like watching game dev YouTubers. I think I started off with like Danny, and sort of his videos, and then I realized there's a lot more people out there, and like you said, it seems like a lot of them are like just starting and they're blowing up like out of nowhere and
yeah,
things, and like it's almost like it's like the best time to get into game dev YouTuber, like YouTube, to be honest, because like so many people are sort of coming out and like doing like they're just starting their channels and doing loads of really cool projects and things.
for
And
sure.
I've been finding it like it's really cool to like branch out and meet new people and stuff.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like there's like anything on YouTube, like I felt like there's a lot of different genres on YouTube other than game dev that were like that grew like this, where you had, I don't, maybe I'm just going to use like cooking as an example. You know, you get a couple big cooking YouTubers, and then that's like prime time to grow because someone kind of blazed the trail, and Danny definitely did with game dev. He made it more accessible to a wider audience. And so I definitely think this is like a fantastic time to get on the game dev trail. I think it's not going to last forever, that's for sure. I think it's going to get harder and harder the more people join. And I think that's part of the reason why I like kicked myself in the butt. I'm like, I got to do this because I knew if I waited a year, I probably wouldn't have grown as fast, or
you wouldn't have blown up as much.
Yeah, so definitely for anyone out there that's considering it, I think now is the time. And if you're watching this video like a year or two later, I don't know, maybe there's still an opportunity, but maybe not. I don't know. So
yeah. So, what's the story behind Firth? How did that start up? And like, why did you decide to make a studio in the first place?
That's a great question. So I've always, there's a lot of people out there that are just solo devs and they really enjoy it. And even though generally when I work on games, it's by myself, I love the idea of working as a team. I have like sketches when I was like 7 years old or something. I would sketch out office space. I didn't like, I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial blood. I would sell, like when I was really young, I sold like duct tape wallets and stuff like that to make some extra cash and stuff.
CEO at heart.
Yeah. Yeah, like, and even though I don't know if I would make a good CEO for the most part, like managing a bunch of people, but there's just something very appealing of, hiring people that I really enjoy working with. So Fearth kind of started like, I want to become the new Nintendo. And then that's still our goal. We just want to create like super excellent games that feel unique. Obviously it's going to be hard to compete with Nintendo. They have their own console. They have their own, like, they've been around for so long. But just compete in the sense of like the level of quality and polish and charm and that like, I guess that Nintendo aesthetic, that everyone's come to love. And, I just thought it'd be cool to create like, even if it's just a smaller studio, honestly, the dream would be like have maybe 10, maybe less than that people, and to just create indie games, to create board games. We're even messing around with software, really just a studio that gives us flexibility to innovate, create new things, and just have a blast with it. And that's kind of how I've always lived my life around the idea of make something because you like it first, like just have fun with it. And if it's good, then maybe sell it, but don't start with like, what can I sell? And then, try to make something fun. I mean, you can do it that way, but I think the main thing is to enjoy the process.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, oh no, sorry, you carry on. I was just going to say, I feel like people can almost like sense when you're a lot more passionate about a project instead of it just being like a cash grab, and like that tends to like go a lot better like commercially if you've actually poured your like heart and soul into it,
For sure. I think people love authenticity. Like even I did a video recently about a board game I made, and I honestly like there wasn't really board game devlogs out there that I had seen, and I just was thinking this video is probably not going to perform well. But I just love this game so much that I worked on that I just want to tell people about my story, my process. And it turns out people actually did want to hear it. And I didn't know what I was talking about, but it's just cool because I think people did see like, hey, this is a project you spent 2 years on, and it's not just like, I didn't make the project just for a YouTube video. Not saying that that's wrong. I think making projects for YouTube videos can be great because it can challenge you to like do things that you've never done before. And that has its own merit. But that game in particular, like it just, I don't know. It was so special and meant so much to me. And it was an important part of my college life, that I don't know. I was just happy to see that it was doing well.
Yeah.
So I always say, like, just don't try hard. That's the main thing. If you're trying hard at something, people are gonna tell. So
Yeah, you gotta if you're not enjoying it, then like, what's the point, kind of thing.
yeah, for sure. Also, one other side note with Fearth,
Mm.
because I never explained this. So a lot of people ask like where Fearth comes from, like the name, and Fearth
Yeah.
actually means like fading or late autumn. And this is so dorky, but it's actually from a Lord of the Rings Elvish to English dictionary. So,
Oh,
hey, I'm not the only like business to do it. I think Palantir or whatever is like some data collection company. They've done it. That's a
yeah.
Lord of the Rings thing. So, name it after
Oh,
what you're
fair enough.
inspired by, I guess. So,
Yeah, yeah. That was gonna be one of my questions. I was wondering what first meant. But there you go. You've answered it for me.
yeah.
But um, so what's actually happening with the Keep now, your card game? Because
Yeah.
after that video, didn't it blow up and everyone wanted wanted a copy?
Yeah, so I got a bunch of angry like comments, like good angry comments, like where can I buy
Yeah.
this and stuff like that. And I was like so blown away. We made a petition. I was like, all right, let's see who's serious about it. I made a petition. I'm like, if we get like 200 signatures, we'll put it on Kickstarter. And now
Yeah.
I think it's at like 3,600 or something. It's way higher than it should be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're gonna be launching a Kickstarter. I think it's gonna be coming out next week, and there'll be a whole new video tied with it. I'm hoping to. I've been working. I've been a little quiet on the Goodgis channel, just so I can get this Kickstarter out. But, yeah, we're super excited about it. We've been contacted by a couple publishers and stuff. And we're just trying to figure out. We reached out to Tabletop Simulator about maybe making a digital version, and we're just gonna do this Kickstarter and see where it goes from there. And I don't know. It's cool. It's exciting. We also have like a million other things going on, so it's like it's a great problem to have. But yeah, for those that are watching or even yourself, if you're interested, it'll be available. I'm hoping next week. I'm praying it'll be next week. So, yeah.
But yeah, what was I gonna say? I've gone. I've completely my brain is sort of left. But yeah. Oh no, that was it. Yeah, it must feel actually like great seeing just this game that you did, like you said, not for YouTube or not for profit, just because you wanted a cool game with like family and friends, to like see it so many people be like angrily commenting that they want it. So I mean, like that. Yeah, that must feel amazing.
Yeah, it was weird because we had a shop that we were selling the remainder of the copies and whatever, and we were just like, I think we had 30 copies left, and I was getting sentimental because what we were gonna do was like we were gonna shut down the shop, and that video was like supposed to be it. It was supposed to be like buy the last copies, and then maybe we'll revisit this. So it was this very sentimental thing. I was looking at old pictures and stuff like that. I was, oh man, I'm getting kind of depressed about it. So seeing people's reactions, like it seriously made me so happy. Like I think I would be happy if any of one of my games would have that reaction, but specifically the Keep, because yeah, it was such a genuine like fun project that I worked on too much in college and like convinced my professors to let me work on it and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's really cool, and hopefully my goal is to have it readily available for anyone that wants to play it. And yeah, we'll figure that out. Printing is a nightmare. So
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, it's a really unique concept as well. Like, sort of cards to build your own dungeon and sort of that kind of gameplay.
Yeah,
And
like oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like what sort of, how did you come up with that kind of thing? Was it just sort of this was your dream game, or what sort of like led you to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what happened originally and I think I briefly mentioned this in the video, but I was looking for games to buy for my friends. Like I like board games, but most of my friends aren't the biggest board game fan. And to be honest, like
Yeah.
my board game collection is pretty terrible. It just like I just there's something very cool about the idea of playing a board game. But yeah, Monopoly's kind of boring. So I was like, oh man, what?
Yeah.
Wonder if there's like some kind of dungeon crawler game. Because I'm a huge fan of roguelites or roguelikes, I should say. And even though they're hard to get into, like playing Angband or Rogue and all these old games, there's just something so appealing to it. I don't know. It's just always been a fascination of mine. So I looked for a game like that and really didn't find anything. Or if I did, it was like $80 or something like that. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it took me back to my roots of making cards with my brother. I'm like, you know what? I'll just prototype something and play it. And I had no intentions of printing it, or if I did, I was just going to print it for myself, and that's it. I had no intentions of selling it. So, and I think the idea originally it was going to be like an RPG, and you were going to go into different rooms. It was kind of based off of Dungeons and Dragons has like a board game, and I can't remember what it's called, but for kids or it's a younger group or whatever. And I liked that game. I thought it had a cool concept where you go into rooms and fight enemies. And I made something kind of similar, but it just felt so slow. It was so boring. And I was like, this is like the worst experience ever. And I had the idea. I don't know where I got the idea to build out like the tiles.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted some sort of exploration. And I know that's not original. I had people comment like, oh, that's just Betrayal on the Hill or whatever, like, which I had never played or even heard that game at the time.
Yeah.
I think building out tiles like isn't the most like original idea by itself, but I think the game together is what feels pretty unique. But from there, I just tried to make it like what feels awkward. Like turns take forever in board games, so I'm like, let's make the turns really fast. Let's add stats. It basically, I don't know, it's like Pokemon mixed with really like a roguelike. And I just was trying to slap these things together because I used to play a ton of Pokemon cards when I was like 17. And I would collect them. I would get rare cards and sell them and stuff like that. And so that was just like fresh in the brain. So I think like and then it just was experimenting. It was playing with other people, and they would be like, "Hey, that's the worst mechanic ever." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And we would just keep playing it and playing it, playing it until it got to a place where it was like really polished. At one point, like you had these stat cards that you would stack on weapons, and then if you died, you lost all your stats and your weapons. It was so confusing. Like, and the characters were weird. Like it evolved so much. The characters used to be enemies, and it really was a process of just 2 years of playing it, and then playing it with people that had no experience with Pokemon, like people that just played Monopoly. Like, hey, sit down, play the keep with us. And I even played it with my grandma. We played it with so many different people that like had no gaming experience. And once we got to a place where they understood it, it was pretty easy. We felt like it was in a good place. So, and I think that's, a lot of game devs preach that. It's like, figure out your core loop. And for me, it was just the game was the core loop. And just keep playing it over and over again until it feels pretty seamless. And it feels great. So it's like perfecting your like platforming controls or something like that. So I think it's a little bit easier with a board game, because if you don't like something, you can just scratch it out and write a different rule down. But I think I really do want to create another board game at some point. We did create this tabletop RPG called Snomes, which I'm sure I'll do a video on at some point. But that started out actually as a sequel to The Keep. And it was another weird RPG game. This super weird prototype where you like move down this grid and then you could level up, and you had to, I don't know. It was really weird. We're going to use like 3D printed pieces and stuff. And then we decided to just make it a tabletop RPG, which is actually really fun. But I definitely would love to dive in more into board games. And I really like, for those who don't know how to program, or if you just want to practice your like game design, it's a great exercise because it forces you, like, it's really easy to make a board game boring. So,
Yeah.
and you have no really graphics to get you out of it either. So, so that's I guess the process I took to get there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I mean, I just completed my first year of uni, and like the first thing they taught us when we got here was we had a whole project of, you're not even touching programming or any sort of code. You need to learn design. We're making a board game, and so we had to like sort of create these really strange board games, and yeah, it's really like it does sort of open up your eyes to like how much sort of playtesting you need to do, and like how long the process is, and like getting design just right so that other people can do it, because that's something that, like, I've sort of discovered as I've like been doing game dev, is not everyone's brain thinks the same way that you do. So
Yeah.
you can't sit there and make your game and then be like, here's my game, enjoy it, and people are like, how do you do this? And I'm like, oh, it's really obvious, you just go there. And they're like, well, that wasn't obvious. And it's like playtesting is like everything,
For sure. Yeah, that actually was a problem with one of the, we call them keep tiles, or the tiles you lay out. And we always assume like one tile is one spot, but I made a little like stone pattern on the ground, so it just, you know, give it some aesthetic. But one of my family members actually thought those were the spaces you could move, because they played Candyland, and that was the only one person that ever had that happen. But it really makes you think of like, I never would have thought that way. And it, you know, maybe next time, like working on the color saturation or something like that, so it doesn't stand out as much. But it's little things like that you'll never know unless you play. And it's super fun exercise, for sure.
How long do you think you spent like trying to perfect it?
I think we were changing rules until like we released it. Like, I want to say it took about 2 years, but if I'm being honest, it probably was about 5 months of work. It just was really spaced out. And we probably played, let's say, I don't know, I don't want to over exaggerate number. Let's say like 60 to 80 games, maybe more. I don't know. It was really weird because, my friend who made it, who's a part of the Fear team, we were both in college together, and we both worked for the same college marketing department, and it was fantastic. Like, everyone was working their design jobs at like these smaller departments for the university. Like you had like the recreation center, and I don't know, some other like college of business, but we worked for the main one. And for some reason, no one liked this job. No one ever wanted it. But our boss was great. We always got the best jobs. And if we finished our work for the day, then we could just hang out. Like I remember playing guitar and just chilling out one day for like an hour or two, because we had nothing to do. So what we would do is, my friend Brad and I, we would just bust out our work as soon as we got there. And then we would just work on the keep. We'd play it during lunch, and we'd invite some of the people there. We're like, hey, you want to play with us? And so we were able to work on it like crazy because of that. So I don't know how many days a week we worked, like 2 or 3 days a week. And we would play at least, I don't know, half a dozen games every day that we got together. So it was quite a bit of testing. I definitely don't recommend doing that unless it's like you have permission, which we did. But that's not a great way to get a raise or whatever.
Job advice.
No, not at all. And we did that for everything. Like, Brad and I were like in like 4 classes together. Plus we had like the study hall thing. So we were just working on it constantly. And I was in a packaging project. They're like, hey, make some packaging. I'm like, sweet. Design the box for the keep in it. But really, I will recommend anyone that's, you know, in college, like find something you are passionate about, like for a project, because you will invest way more time. Like I probably sunk way more time into this stuff for those classes, even though it was ultimately something for, a game that I was trying to make. But if you find projects that you're really excited to work on, a lot of times for the most part, your professors will be cool with encouraging it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I've found they definitely like to support you with like your own project and watch you sort of grow. I mean, I like a lot of my game dev work and like games that I've been working on, I've kind of done like whilst doing lessons, and they're sort of like, oh, what's this you're working on? I'm like, oh, this, and I'm just implementing like what I'm being taught, but like I'm using it to sort of further my own kind of projects and stuff. And I found that like is really useful, like use of my time here at uni and stuff.
definitely.
I was gonna ask what sort of plans do you have like for the future of? Well, I mean, I guess for like the future of Keep to begin with, but just like Firth in general. Have you got any other like sort of projects planned or things that you can talk about?
Yeah. So ideally, first with the Keep, ideally, if the Kickstarter does well, we would love to localize it. I'm actually working with some people in our Discord to translate it in some other languages. So at least it's like a PDF. So if you want to play in another language, you can. We're going to be doing print and play copies. So people that can't, like, shipping is $50 outside the US, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So
Yeah,
in order to combat that, we're making print and play copies. So you just, it's like what, $5-10 or whatever, and you just print it out, and super easy. But yeah, what we'd love to do is get some localizers, and actually get a manufacturer. That would be great. I don't really want to have to deal with like mailing things out, like thousands of copies or whatever. That just seems like a big headache. Even mailing out like 20 copies was insane.
Yeah, turning up at the post office with a sack full of card games.
They're so big too, the boxes. Yeah. So finding some way to automate. Yeah, we want to automate it. There's ways that we can sell it that are more expensive, and we really don't want to do that. We want to make it as cheap as possible. So I don't know. Maybe eventually it's a matter of like even talking with a publisher. But my goal is just for it to be out there so people can play it. And then I have like a million expansion ideas for the game. There's
I was going to ask if you were planning expansions and stuff.
Yeah, so we had a non-combat one called Garden Games. That's going to be available with a Kickstarter. And then we almost finished one called Payback Party, and it's team-based competitive Keep, basically. Because I had this idea of like how you could actually make the game kind of competitive and have tournaments that we could host. So I would love to get to that place. I think that expansion may be a stretch goal. And then I have like a bunch of other expansions of adding weird mechanics like dinosaurs or like slippery things or more traps. So yeah, if that continues to grow, then there's definitely like so much we want to add to it. So many new characters. It all depends on, what people, it's hard to sell expansions unless you sell copies. So ultimately that's our priority. But for the rest of Firth, we have a lot going on. We have Dewdrop Dynasty. I'm going to be releasing. I've kind of mentioned this slightly to some people, but basically next devlog, whenever it comes out, I'm going to be releasing a portion of the game for free. So it's just like, hey, you can play chapter 1 or whatever. And I'm just going to put it out there, get some feedback, have people play it, and just kind of get people's, what's their interest level. It's like, oh, this is fun. Do you have 10 people say that? Do you have 200 people say that? Do you have 2,000?
Yeah.
And then go from there and then release updates for it. And it's kind of going to be like early access, except for it's free. It's like, it's you couldn't ask for anything better. You get the game basically for free. And then when we finish it, obviously we're going to put it on Steam and maybe the Switch, which would be awesome. And then obviously we charge. I don't know when that's going to happen. We also have a mobile game that we're working on that's close to being done. It's a sequel to one of our games, Calamari Madness. It's going to be really just fun, easy to play. You can play quick little sessions, kind of like an arcade shoot 'em up kind of game. And because we released one mobile game, but it's like a Japanese learning app, and a lot of people like it, but we want to make something that's a little bit more useful to more people, or like enjoyable by more people. And then a little sneak peek is we're working on some tools. So eventually, and I think this is the first time I ever said it. Eventually, we want to try to make a game editor / engine thing, kind of like Bitsy, not quite like as crazy as Pico 8, but something really simple where people can make games, and we want to have some game jams with that. And we're working on, there's a bunch of other secret little software things and other projects. I've been experimenting a lot with online multiplayer, and the tests have been extremely successful. But can't say any more about that, but it's, there's some cool stuff down the road that like is completely behind the scenes that people don't think that's happening. That is. So, I guess that's as cryptic as I'll be about that.
I mean, that's something for people to look forward to. So.
For sure.
So like, what's been the hardest thing, like, in this whole game dev journey? Like, starting first, doing, like, your YouTube, like, out of everything, what have you found to be, like, the hardest thing you faced? And, like, kind of, how did you get through it?
Probably the two hardest things are accounting. Like, it's generally a good rule of thumb to get an LLC or like incorporate, like have some actual business when you are making money, especially if you're making enough money to like afford an LLC. And figuring all that stuff out, and taxes, and like, you got to Schedule C, and then if you have people work for you, you got to contract them out. There's a lot of just like nitty gritty details with the business that I didn't realize how much work that would be. And even like just accounting, like it's like every Friday I just sit down for an hour or two and I just like account. And it's not like I'm buying a bunch of things or crazy things are happening, but it's just figuring out the accounting for the business. Really most of what like Goodgis makes and stuff like that channel makes and Fearth goes back into contracting out like artists, contracting out people to just do work for Fearth. So it's really just reinvesting in itself. So I would say that's one of the tricky things. The other thing is probably the mental aspects of dealing with, thousands of voices of, you'll get comments, and people always say this, like, and you don't really realize it until you experience it for yourself, but you'll get a bunch of comments like, oh, I love this video and stuff like that. And that's great. And I always appreciate every single comment, and I reply to every single one. Then you'll just get weird off the cuff comments about people critiquing something, and they're wrong. They're like, someone was saying how, what was it, like Unreal Engine's open source, and you can view its source code, but it's not open source.
No.
And it's just, and if you're like, oh, Goodgis, you're so dumb, and that's just part of the territory. You never know what's going through people's minds, but it's the hard part though is you can kind of get wrapped up. Your identity can get wrapped up in it. And so this sounds weird, but I always view like Goodgis as this little elf, like this other persona or something like that. So when people compliment me, they're really complimenting Goodgis and not me. And I think by doing that, it makes me realize, like, I don't think it's healthy to sit around and be like, wow, all these people think I'm so cool. Like that's weird, like, because we're all human beings. We're all the same. And I'm just a guy that is on making videos on the internet and just likes hanging out. Like, so I think it's always just staying grounded, and people really don't tell you anything about that when you're making videos. And I think it's being a good steward of it and not getting like weird about it, and just always being grateful of the people around you and the support. Like, don't get an ego, basically is what I'm saying. Like, don't get an ego. Don't think you're hot stuff. Don't be like, I'm Goodgis the e-celeb. I'm not an e-celeb. Like, I know Polly Mars always jokes about that. But I think those are probably the two and those are kind of weird, unexpected things. You don't think that would be an issue. You don't think accounting would be that much work, but other than that, I think it's like a blast. And even those things are easy to work through.
Yeah.
But they're just, I guess, more challenges than I thought they would be.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like those are like a lot of that sort of stuff is like people don't really, when they're starting out and stuff, they don't really think about like I'm gonna have to do like the accounting and stuff like that, and like there's a lot of things that people don't really see, like a lot of the mental stuff you like go through, and things like burnout and like creative block and all that sort of stuff, and like all the little like challenges that like at the beginning aren't really that obvious, and you dive head first, and then you're like, oh, this is something I have to deal with now, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's like
go ahead.
Go on. I was just gonna say it's like recently I just put out an update video about like where I've been and stuff, and it's just I've been so busy with uni and everything, and I've just completely just lost all motivation, like constantly working on stuff and getting like burnt out and stuff, and like feature creep, that's like a massive one.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
I know you did a video on.
Yeah.
Which that was the first time I sort of learned about it, and I was like, wow, this is what I have.
Yeah.
And like things like that, then people just never really, I feel like they never really see that side, and it's never really like portrayed that much on YouTube. I mean, I know, which is nice, your like a lot of your videos are quite like hey, this is some issues that happen in game dev, and you can run into these, but like this is normal, so don't worry about it, and this is how you can sort of deal with it and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of kind of hidden, like a hidden side that people don't really think about and see at the beginning.
For sure. I think like especially the mental game is just so tricky because, we're thinking about like even 50 years ago, or I don't even know, like 20 years ago, we didn't really have social media, and everything's about likes and are people following me and all this stuff. And we kind of associate value with a number. And so it's tricky. Like when you're growing and you look at the stats, like, oh, how come I grew more here and then I'm not growing here? How come this video did well and how come it didn't? And you kind of take it personally, like, oh, these people used to love me and now they don't, or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and it can get really weird. It can get very, you can get emotional about it. And I think at least starting off, that was hard because I'm a person, I don't really use social media that much other than YouTube and Twitter a little bit, because I got off it just because I just felt like it was kind of making me compare myself too much to other people.
Yeah.
So with doing YouTube, it's easy to just like look at like seriously have like your subscriber count pulled up and just stare at it. But recently I found, the past few months, I just haven't really been looking at any of that stuff because I've just been so busy with stuff and being outside. There's so many things I want to do and hobbies I have outside of just working too, that I don't really have a chance to look at this stuff. And that's great. And honestly, I feel so much happier because it's like if I don't grow or if I do grow, it doesn't matter. Like I'm just putting stuff out there. There's already people out there that enjoy the videos. Not every video is going to do well. You're going to have videos that just perform poorly. And generally you can figure out why. Like it's not like if you make a video that has like a horrible thumbnail and it's just like I ate a mouse or something like that. Like, all right, that's not going to perform. Like, but if you have one that's a little bit more generic, a little bit more open-ended, and it gives valuable information, it's going to do better. Like,
Yeah.
so it's not that big of a mystery, but yeah, I definitely, you're absolutely right though. It's like people don't realize all the little details, and it's a lot. It's a lot to do. Plus, even just working on a game is a lot to do. Plus, trying to attach the like making videos weekly or something like that.
Yeah.
It's nutty. Yeah, anyone that like, I don't know. I stopped doing weekly videos because I couldn't manage it. And if it weren't for having an editor now, I don't think I would be able to do it anymore because it's so much work. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. Once I started like actually like doing some videos, I was like, how do people pump out videos so quickly? It's ridiculous. Like
Yeah,
you sit there
it,
editing for hours, and you're like, what?
yeah, you have
But
like
yeah,
20 seconds done. It's seriously like, and I know like if I spend an extra 2 or 3 hours, I know the video will perform better. So it's really
mm,
hard. Like, you want to make sure that your quality is high. Um, so yeah, it's tricky. I think if maintain a schedule that makes sense with what you can, what's
yeah,
reasonable. Like even when I couldn't do weekly, I tried to do bi-weekly and then a stream.
yeah,
And sometimes you can't do that. But I really noticed if you just post consistently, though, you will grow,
mm,
especially if it's quality content. So it's just like, but it's that those are the two hardest things: have quality and quantity. So
yeah,
um,
yeah. It's quite hard to like hit the right balance with those because
yeah,
you want the best quality, but then you can't get them out fast enough.
yeah. I don't. It'll be a long time until I do a 20-minute video. I'm just saying, like, it's gonna take me like a month to edit or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we talked about like the worst thing, but like, what do you think the best thing that's happened like happened to you by doing like game dev and YouTube and all that sort of stuff?
Um, that's I think probably the number one best thing is just meeting all the different people.
Mm.
Um, there's just like it's so cool to chat with people across the globe like we're doing right now. Like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and before like I would talk with friends and stuff like that, but all my friends live in Ohio. They're very local.
yeah,
And I only had a few friends that were like I guess out of the country. Um, and once started doing YouTube, like I'm sure people have seen the bromance between Reese Geoffroy and me that we
yeah,
have.
yeah,
Um, and Reese and I have become really good friends. He's my first true Canadian friend, and it's just sweet. Like it's cool chatting with him, or even some of the other game devs, or sometimes we'll have community like Discord calls, and we'll just have people from like Brazil and Japan, and like Europe or the UK and like
yeah,
Ohio, Canada, like all these people talking together, and just so cool. I love culture. I love like to see how things are different.
mm.
I was talking to Buddy Games one day about kilts because he's Scottish, and it's just like it's stuff I never like just don't really think about. It doesn't really
Mm.
register with me. Um, so that's probably like the best part about it. And other than that, I think it's just seeing people happy with something you create. Like
Yeah,
as a creative, that's like one of the best feelings. You make something and people are like, this is sweet. Like, um, that's ultimately what you want. You want people to enjoy what you're making. So it always makes me happy when people, even like, I'll have people say nice things about games that are awful. Like, I mean, like I don't even like, Peaches in the Seven Sea, that little Metroidvania duck game.
mm.
It's horrible. Like, I think one point it was broken, or you can glitch through a wall. People are like, it's
Yeah,
so much fun. Like, and maybe they're lying, maybe they're being honest, but I just it always makes me happy to see people enjoying it. So
yeah, yeah.
for
No,
sure,
I can definitely like, yeah, I definitely get behind that because I think that's the best thing that I've found doing this is like sort of branching out to like. I mean, when I first started, I was like, I'm just gonna make videos. That's it. But like, I've been messaging other devs. I've been like chatting to people, talking in the comments and stuff, and like, it's really nice like finding this whole like massive community out there of people passionate about like what you do as well, and sort of getting to just chat to them about just random stuff and like
yeah,
sort of grow those friendships that like you never would have had like before doing it and stuff. And like
yeah,
yeah, doing like getting people's like feedback of like this is really cool like what you're doing and stuff, and that sort of almost I guess like almost like validation of like this is cool, and like I'm like other people think it's cool and like love it too and stuff, and just that like knowing that like you've sort of got all these like-minded people that you're almost like in a weird way you're almost like friends with like your whole audience kind of thing,
Yeah.
and it's just really nice to know there's like loads of people out there that also love what you're doing and things like that.
Yeah, I think affirmation is super important, and it's something my parents always did. Like, growing up, I'd make a really ugly drawing and show my parents, like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Parents always do that. And then when I grew up, they never stopped doing it. Like, I'll still be like, hey, I made the C++ application or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm sure they don't know what that fully
yeah,
is. Maybe
it goes straight over their head.
but they still like, oh, that's amazing, and they're supportive. And I think, as a lot of kids, a lot of people out there are just looking for affirmation. So
Yeah,
I think it's cool with YouTube being able to get affirmation, and then in return, I like to do streams. I just like to talk with people, encourage them,
yeah,
because they're inspiring me to do what I do every day, and I just want to give back to them and inspire them as well. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's something I've been like wanting to do is streams, because like, I mean, I haven't done it yet because I'm like, I don't know if people would want to watch it, but like, it's just like I just want to like be able to chat with people, but like in YouTube comments and stuff like that, it's not really the same as like on a stream, like live. You just can just chat with them, and it's
for
like
sure.
you get that like extra sort of layer of like almost connection, I guess, with your audience and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but that's something I'm excited to sort of start doing.
Yeah, for sure. Streaming is so much fun. It's something I always look forward to, and I'm always like, it is funny to see all the craziness in the chat sometimes. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a lot more like you can pick up nuance. If I say something like, "Hey, you," and I'm saying it over audio, you can kind of pick up if I'm being goofy or not. And sometimes the chat
Yeah.
people take it like a little too serious and like, why is Goodgis mad at
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one downside to comments is you can never tell, are they angry or are they joking? I can't tell. But
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, we love that.
Yeah.
I was wondering like what would be like if you could I guess if you could like almost like go back in time to your past self, what would be like one like the main like bit of advice you'd give yourself, like with what you know now from doing the game dev and everything? What would you tell yourself and tell like everyone watching this as well? Like what's probably your favorite tip or your best tip?
I think like back in the day I really struggled learning. It took me forever to learn game dev because there just wasn't a whole lot of resources out there, and I was too focused on learning the game engine that I was using, GameMaker,
Mm.
that I kind of regret the fact that I didn't just learn a standalone language or like C++ or Python or whatever. Like I do have some regrets about that have kind of set
Mm.
me back now, where like one of our Fearth members is a couple years younger than me, and he's just like, he'll look at my code sometimes like, oh, spaghetti. And like he to be perfectly honest, he over engineers things too, but like there's some simple principles. Like I was just trying to make like a 2D array in Godot, and I was like struggling with it a little bit. I'm like, how do I do this again?
Yeah.
That if I would have like learned Python or C++, C++ or C Sharp or one of those languages, JavaScript or whatever, or like, yeah, I guess JavaScript, Java, any of that, I think it would have set me up better. I think I still would have probably went into graphic design, pursued my career and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I would have just had a much better understanding of how actual programmers work, because now with YouTube, you actually see real devs, like professional devs, AAA devs, are like, hey, they have videos now and they show stuff, and there's all these resources. Where when I was a kid, it was like just a bunch of hobbyists. It wasn't like anyone that no one really knew what they were doing, or if they did, they didn't tell you. So
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
the process that I created for making games was literally my own process, and it was terrible because of that.
Mm.
So, yes, I really encourage people to learn an engine, but also learn a language, because you'll learn those fundamentals You know, I learned Python because Python's very similar. It's like GD script and Godot is like Python basically,
Yeah.
except for a few changes. And now I'm learning C++. I got to learn the big boy language. So that way I have like the fundamentals. I'm learning, you know,
Yeah.
pointers and I don't know, like all these crazy things, actually making applications. I would
Yeah.
love to actually make a game using, you know, a library and stuff. But I think that learning, even if you don't learn all of the language, and the Fear team, some of our artists have been learning Godot and just, you know, working with how they can import artwork and just like move the process along. And even them, I'll have them learn a basic form of a language, or like, hey, learn some Python, just so they understand how programming logic works. And I think it really helps, even if you are an artist. So yeah, it's like learning a programming language is like, it's like eating broccoli. It's not always fun, but it's great for you. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with like getting the artist to learn programming. I mean, I feel like if you're getting into this kind of thing, it's always best to sort of learn a little bit about what the other people do. So if you want to be a programmer, learn a little bit about like different art and stuff like that, because it makes like talking to other people so much easier, because they sort of you have like a bit of a common understanding of what's actually going on and what's being done. And that it just makes it so much easier.
yeah,
So yeah.
I'll help you in the future too. Like art directors or creative directors at like an agency, like at where I work, we have creative directors, and they know how to do design work. They know how to do copywriting, which isn't like legal stuff. Copywriting is just typing out all the text for games or I don't know, anything that has text in it. Copywriters do, and then photography, all the stuff. And our creative directors know how to do all of that, or at least they know enough to be able to direct it. So I think it's smart even if you know you're just learning programming, understand art, understand the basic principles. Like I always say, to be a good critic, you don't have to be good at it. You know, like Roger Ebert or whatever, you know, in the like, famous movie critics. Did he ever make a movie? No. Like, so you can develop an eye and an ear like for sounds and music and all this stuff without doesn't mean you'll ever be good at art. I'm not saying that like, but you can be a good critic and be like, give advice like, hey, do this thing, change that color. That's a little too vibrant and whatever. And I think that's super useful to have for sure. So
Another question I was just having, like, because like you were saying about all the resources like we have nowadays. Obviously, I'm at uni like studying programming, but would you say that like if someone wants to start out game dev like at the moment, would you say they should go to school for it, or do you think like there's enough online sort of resources nowadays to sort of let them teach themselves?
I think it comes down to what you're trying to get out of it, I guess. I think I'll always say that school will give you just like a really solid, rock solid, fundamental understanding of what you're learning. Like, because it forces you all the little like nitty gritty details that you generally may skim over if you're being self-taught. School forces you. Like, I'll never forget in one of my illustration classes, I think it took us like 3 weeks to actually start illustrating, because we just were talking about like all the tools, every single tool in Illustrator and Photoshop and all the stuff like that. And it was just so monotonous. I'm like, okay, why do I need to know how to do this and that? But because of that, I had a much better understanding of the software, or like the principles of like, hey, don't put your type too close to the margin of a paper, like to the edge or whatever, this and that. And I think, you know, and this kind of goes back to, you know, I self-taught. All the programming has been like self-taught. Never took any classes for it. And there are fundamental things that I missed that I'm relearning that are kind of elementary because I didn't go to school. I do think if you're like a hobbyist and you want to learn, or even if you want to do full-time dev, you probably can. I think it may be harder to get into AAA. I know for like my design job, I needed my degree. Like it's as simple as that. Like I need my piece of paper, and it
Yeah.
really they liked my portfolio, but they couldn't hire me without my degree.
Yeah.
Um, so it depends. If you want AAA, it always sounds like, um, that's university's the like right way to go. And even if you don't end up doing that, I still think like you'll get a core foundation, and then but if you want to try to do indie dev, you just want to try to make games or whatever and try to pursue the dream, I think you still can. Like Udemy has really great classes.
Mm.
Like I'm taking one that's by like a guy with a PhD in like computer science, a C++ course, and it's so thorough. It's like 40 hours, and he explains everything. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, I'm sure that's as thorough as an actual C++ class in college.
Yeah.
And if not, just get another one. I don't know. Uh, but
Yeah.
I definitely think there's enough resources that, um, if you really want to do something, like whether it's art, whether it's programming, whether it's game dev, all the stuff, I do think you can do it without an education. It just takes discipline and it takes a lot of time. And if you're cool with that route, then sweet. And if you're not, then university is like the best route because they'll force you to be cool with that. And like it'll
Yeah.
force you to get all those little extra details. And of course
Yeah.
you'll have a teacher that you can pick their brain and stuff like that. I've never had that. I just had a book. Like, why isn't this working? So
Yeah. 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 No, I agree. Like, I think school's definitely like, yeah, the best place to go if you wanna like properly learn everything you need to know. Because I was self-taught for like 2 years, and then I was like, I'm not doing everything right, am I? Because everything's going a bit weird. So like, go to school and stuff, and like, yeah, it does come in useful having like the lecturers and things to speak to and stuff. And like another thing that I think helps with it is the sort of it's like a lot of places, at least like at least the uni I'm at, like they almost simulate the work environment. So it's like, make sure you've got your like programs in on time and that kind of thing. Like, and it helps with like time management and stuff. But I definitely agree that like, if you just want to do it indie dev and like you're just a hobbyist to begin with, try like self-learning it to see if like it's for you, kind of thing, and just to see how you can do it, like how you do with it and stuff. And if you think school's right for you, and it like that's the best way that you learn, instead of just sort of sitting down and just researching your own stuff in your own way, like, go for it. But
I think that's
yeah.
a great point about how it's like simulating work, because I think that's maybe the most beneficial part of university is like, yeah, like the projects we did in school and the way we turned them in was just like it. We would meet like with the professor like they were our client. They would give us feedback like they were our client, and
Mm.
then they basically treated us like we were just working for them. It's basically like a job. It's like an internship that you pay
Yeah.
money to do. Like it's really
Yeah.
it's
A
weird,
very
but
expensive one.
yeah. But because of that, like, and it was so grueling in college, like they made us do so much stuff that
Mm.
now when I'm working now, it's the exact same environment, exact same stuff, exact same type of meetings, except for it's easier and people are nicer. So it's like, not
Yeah.
that people are super rude, but it's just like, people aren't in their pajamas or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's professional, your colleagues that you're working with that are, trained experts. So I think if you really want to experience like that, yeah, it's you can't beat going to the university. So
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, I don't really have any more questions. Oh, actually, I have one more. So obviously, I reached out to you to do this podcast, but I know there's a lot of people that are like small devs trying to sort of like grow out and like reach out to like other people and sort of start almost like their own little community of like other little devs and like small devs around. And like, do you have any advice on like how you would branch out and how you did branch out to like meet people like Reese and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was actually funny because Reese kind of reached out to me. He was in my chat one day, um, and he just said, "Hey, like, you want to chat sometime? We'll have to do a collaboration." So I honestly think the best way um, to collaborate, meet new people in your community is just ask them if they want to do a collaboration. Like
Mm.
even bigger people. Like I've reached out to some bigger devs of like, hey, you want to do stuff, and they're like, yeah. Like most people are very nice, and if they're not, like they're just busy. That's how I view it. You
Yeah.
rarely ever get someone that's like, no, and if they like in a rude way.
Yeah.
And I think it's just try to reach out to people, and and this is what I always say, when you have success and you get bigger, when people reach out to you, like do the same back. Like
Yeah.
always try to just be generous. And I think creating a community is a huge part of YouTube. um and I can't think of there's a couple channels that they're kind of making their own group together, and I can't think of their names right off the bat, but I think it's great. I think creating a network, creating a community, it's easier to bring people in if it's 4 or 5 devs, or YouTubers like in a group than it is as an individual.
Yeah.
And even though I had that at first, I didn't have that, but I had Fearth, and I had the help of other people in the Fearth team, and then eventually, meeting Reese, and then doing the dev dump and like podcasts and stuff like that. You just naturally meet more people, but yeah. And the main thing too is like when you're starting out, have fun with it. It's easy to look at other people and be like, oh, okay, Goodgis made a video in 48 hours, and so I need to make that too. Like
Yeah.
those types of videos, like even that video, like Polymars, my friend Polymars did, like, he learned SDL or something, SFML in 48 hours. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that too.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, going back to the authentic thing, it doesn't always come across authentic, or it just doesn't do as well. So just
Yeah.
think about a subject that you're interested in, find a unique spin on it, and I guarantee that there'll be other people that are interested in it. But and one other thing that really helped, I will say, if you're a smaller channel, posting on Reddit, you'll get a lot of mean responses. Yeah, Reddit is just notorious for
Yeah. Yeah.
sad comments, but I posted on Reddit when I first started, and that helped me gain some traction. And then go to devlog, like the hashtag or whatever, or not the hashtag, but you just search for it, or game dev or something like that, and look at recent videos, and then actually watch those people's videos and comment and interact. That's another great way of meeting people. I did that early on because, like, it's hard when you start making videos and no one knows who you are, and you just boom, you put it out there. You don't really have connections. So
Yeah.
some of the people that I still watch, or people that have kind of become my friend, over that are a part of my community now, I met just by doing that, just by leaving friendly comments, encouraging people.
Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, I think that's the best way to do it. And don't be like, I don't know, don't be snarky. Don't be like, oh, your video is terrible or something like that. Like, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, if you're encouraging and life giving, people just wanna be around you. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be my best advice. So
Yeah. I mean, like, I found, obviously, like, messaging you and stuff. I, like, when I first started doing it, I was like, I'm a tiny YouTuber. Then none of them are gonna have time for me. They're all just gonna be like, no, I can't do that. That's like not worth my time and stuff. But like after like speaking to like you and talking with Polymars and Reese and like a bunch of other like people that I've sort of talking about like what I want to do this podcast, like to get to know people and sort of spread tips and just chat about game dev and whatever. And like just talking to people, I've realized they're so much nicer than like they were in my head. I was like these terrifying people that are like much bigger than me. They're not gonna have like the time of day for me. But like, yeah, I definitely agree. It's like you just gotta sort of go for it and like reach out, speak to people, and yeah, everyone's lovely. Is what I've discovered. They're not all big angry people.
and I think, like, if someone is that way, the only way I could see is if they're busy. You know, a lot of
Yeah.
people have a lot of stuff going on. I've had, you know, people that have made one video and were like, hey, you want to do a crossover video and stuff like that. And I would like, I wish I could do that for every single one, but I already have like a million videos lined up, and it's just like,
Yeah.
nah, I wish I could. Yeah, so I think for the most part, I'm not gonna vouch for every game dev out there, but they're all very nice, and especially if you're like, hey, would you, would you mind talking about game dev? Like,
Yeah.
yes, you know, people love talking about what they're interested in. So,
Yeah.
I always look forward to chatting about this stuff and jump on any opportunity to do it. And I know, yeah, Reese and Polymars and all those, you know, other guys are really great about that too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even this like this sort of first episode of this podcast, I was very nervous going into it because I was like, I have never done this before. If I mess it up, like, what it's gonna be awful. But like, it's really chill. You've been amazing to speak with, and it's like, yeah, people just need to sort of reach out, and everyone's lovely. It's a really nice community.
yeah, like even when we first started doing the dev dump, I mean, even now when we do the dev dump, it's so awkward. Like we're just like, especially because there's a horrible lag delay between all of us because we're like pretty much all in different countries. I
Yeah.
think except for Polymars and I. So it's just like it's awkward. You say weird things. Who cares? That's like the beauty of it. You know, it adds some real and raw charm to it. So
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's better than not doing anything at all and being like, oh, I wish I would have done it. You know, regrets are way worse than just trying to reach out. And I've done that too with artists. I've reached out to studios. I've reached out to big artists and asked questions. And, you know, sometimes you don't hear anything back. And sometimes people, I had like a really amazing Blender artist show me some tips and tricks on what he does. I'm like, what the heck? And he even went out of his way to like make a tutorial for me, just for
Yeah.
me. Um, so most people, yeah, they love talking about what they do, and they just want to teach and share their knowledge. So, yeah, definitely do it. Definitely pester Reese.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
him I sent you.
Yeah. 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 No, I've already got him lined up for for an episode. But yeah.
Perfect.
Uh, but yeah, no. Yeah. Oh, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah,
I hope
you
you've.
too.
I hope it hasn't been too bad talking
No,
talking on here.
it was my pleasure. So
But yeah. But no, yeah. Thank you very much for coming on. And I look forward to all your new videos. Some of them sound very interesting, especially the software. That stuff sounds really cool.
yeah, we'll see how that turns out. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll see where that goes.
who knows?
Yeah.
But
But yeah, no,
yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I'll speak to you again soon.
sounds good.